Hi, it's Michael Angelo Caruso. Welcome back to another episode of the Talk to Me podcast. I'm with my old pal Bob Summers. Hi, Bob.
Hi, Michael.
Good to see you, brother.
You too, partner. Thank you.
We have known each other forever. A little bit more about that in just a minute. If you are listening to this episode on Podbean or iTunes or any of the major platforms, you can watch the video version of all the episodes on the Michael Angelo Caruso YouTube channel. If you're watching the YouTube channel version and you like to listen to podcasts when you're out walking the dog or on the treadmill or driving, you can certainly check in on the iTunes and other podcast platforms to have your cake and eat it too. How's that sound? Bob, it's so good to see you. I think we've known each other, I'm thinking 15 years, maybe more.
Oh, more. It's over 20 for sure. Yeah.
And
Feels
we
that
met in Hawaii, where you live.
way.
And it was, I think we were kind of like in a mutual admiration society. I think we connected before I got there on a trip, and you were kind enough to meet up with me. And I think we visited a Rotary Club together, and you had us over the house, or we had a drink someplace. I can't quite remember the details of it, but it was fun.
As a matter of fact, I was speaking at that Rotary meeting, and the fact you didn't remember it tells me a little something, something about the impact I had
Do
on
you
you.
know how many Rotary meetings I've been to?
More than three?
And you know that all the districts have numbers.
Yeah.
And people will see me at different places. They have an international conference every year, and I go to that, and they go, "Hey, Michael, do you remember when you spoke to District 642 Zic, 7 years
Right.
ago?" And I always go, "I sure do. That was great, wasn't it?"
Yeah.
But
There
yeah,
you go.
after a while, I've been in Rotary. It seems like it changes every year. So I started saying I was a lifetime Rotarian.
Yep.
But I never charged for talks, and Rotary found out. And I've done hundreds and hundreds of talks for this great organization. It's my great gift, great pleasure to give back this gift to them. And I've given up a long time ago trying to keep track of where I spoke when. But the Hawaii trip was amazing. And by the way, the International Convention is coming back to Hawaii. And I'm
Oh,
going to bring
wow.
the redhead out. And you and I and your wife hopefully can get out and,
I'm
and
anxious
have
to meet
dinner
her.
someplace.
That'd be great. That
We're
would
going
be
to talk
great.
a little bit about AI today, everybody. And part of the reason that this intrigues me is if you mention AI at a cocktail party, a lot of people start to run out of the room. They're so fearful of this artificial intelligence. And Bob has a really interesting take on it. And I think you're going to be not only pleased at where artificial intelligence is going, but you're also going to adopt Bob's positive attitude about it. He's got a really nice spin on it. Before we do that, I want to talk a little bit about Bob's background, have him fill us in a bit. How
Mhm.
did you get to Hawaii in the first place? I cannot remember.
Oh, it's a great story. So we had a business in Atlanta. It was a customer service training business. It did really well. In 1994, my wife said, "Hey, we can afford to take a vacation to Hawaii. Let's do that."
All
So we
right.
came to Hawaii, and it was time to go home and get on the plane. And she said, "I'm not getting on the plane. I'm staying." And I'm like, "You can't do that. We have two kids in Atlanta. We have to go back.
You can't do that. We have
Can't do
children.
that." So I haven't seen my kids in 30 years, but they know we're here.
That's not what happened.
So, but
That is
anyway,
a good story, but that is not what
oh,
happened.
thank you. Well, it's not even actually close. When we visited here, it was magical. And you've been here, so you know what it's like, right? The weather's perfect all the time.
Yeah,
No heating, no air conditioning. The people are wonderful. It's super safe. And we're beach people. We're sun people. So, we snorkel, swim. We're out at the beach all the time. But anyway, it was like the perfect vacation. And when we came back, my wife said, "Okay, starting today." I'm going to find a way that we can move to Hawaii and be there in 2 years. So she started planning, and 2 years later, sure enough, we packed up the kids, we moved to Hawaii, and it was a smooth transition, other than the fact it's very expensive here. And this was early, and this was 1996, I think it might have been. So the internet wasn't really coming along. Email was just starting.
right.
So fortunately, our business in Atlanta did really well, and we had the ability to kind of retire from that and just start from scratch. It was all the stars lined up, and it worked perfectly. But
Beautiful.
happy to be here. It's been wonderful.
I know that your life has had many interesting chapters. For a while there, you ran an organization. I don't know if it was the name of the company, but the platform was something like Recognized Expert, where you were helping people become recognized experts in their various industries. I know there was a podcast involved. Maybe you did some coaching as well. I don't really, how did that play out?
Well, thank you. And most of that, Michael, was a hobby because right after we had moved to Hawaii, I didn't want to just do nothing, right? So I decided to create this podcast because there's a lot of people you and I have in common that we've admired throughout our careers. And
Right.
again, keep in mind, this is 20, 25 years ago. People like Dan Kennedy, Jay Levinson, these big marketing people. So I thought, rather than just read their books, how great to create a podcast. And this is early on, 2003, 2004. And every single person I asked, I said, I'd like you to be on my podcast. They all said yes. So it was wonderful interviewing people like Jay Levinson and Dan Kennedy and Robert Cialdini, right? The guy with Influence the Art.
Influence.
He is the absolute sweetest man in the whole world. Of all of my maybe 200 podcasts, he was my favorite. And I can say that because I didn't have an opportunity to interview you at the time. He would have been.
I'm a big fan of Cialdini, both his first book and his second. His first book it was written so long ago, it's a little stiff to read. So I was
Yeah.
really glad that he updated it and brought it into the modern lexicon. Good for you, man. And then after Recognized Expert, you were involved with the likability uh, concept or program. How did that go?
Right. Well, that was an interesting thing too, because prior to moving here, our business was Sommers Communication. And we ended up building what became the largest customer service training company in the country. We did
Oh,
about 3,500 live presentations every year. So I had hired like 3 dozen professional speakers in lieu of trainers. As you know, there's a huge difference. And I knew if we were going to make a difference, I needed professional speakers. I needed people who were great storytellers,
yeah.
entertaining, could get a point across where the audience was just engaged with them. So at the end of that, we did this training for the Postal Service, was one of our customers. And at the end of the first year of training, I think it's the University of Michigan that has a customer satisfaction index. And every year they go out to the top 300 or 400 biggest businesses and they see who's the highest rated, who's the most improved. And the Postal Service certainly was not the highest rated customer service organization, but the year after we did our training, they were the most improved customer service organization in America. And after, they had been awarded that, the Postmaster General accredited us with that happening. So
Wow.
we got lots of requests from media all over the country. How did you do this? It's a huge company. How did they get such great changes? And I realized, Michael, we did not teach customer service. That's what they asked us to do. And by the way, when we won that contract, there were 3 of us in the end. It was us, Dale Carnegie, and Ken Blanchard. Remember him? Who
Oh,
moved
sure.
like
The 1 minute manager.
Right, right. So we were ultimately the 3 that they boiled it down to, and we got the contract. And I remember asking him, I said, was it close? Who was second and third? And the lady that, initiated the contract, she said there was no second place. You guys were head and shoulders above everybody else. And she couldn't explain why. We all did a demo for the Postal Service to see who they wanted to hire. And ultimately, they realized we weren't teaching and training customer service. We were changing behavior. And the way to change someone's behavior is to change how they feel about themselves and what they do. So when the media was asking me all these questions, I said, wow, we didn't do that. What we did is we taught people to be competent in their jobs and likable. And those were the 2 things, because when someone is competent, likability opens doors to everything. Your life is so much more fun. People want to see you succeed. And likability isn't, I'm a people pleaser. Likability is things like finding out what you have in common, talking to people about themselves, being
Yeah.
highly empathetic. And there's like 12 different rules, basic rules about likability. But when our audience started to understand that when I serve someone at the counter, and the ultimate, if I were to give you one definition of what likability is, it's do I like myself when I am in your presence? So that's what we taught. So as a clerk or a mail carrier, the goal was how can you have your customer like themselves, feel good about themselves when they're in your physical presence? If you carry that through the entire transaction, your life will be different, their life will be different, and everything will go a million times better. And it did. So then what happened, getting back to the likability thing, I realized that this is a skill that most customer service people don't teach. They just don't. And it's a lifelong skill that when you can help other people like themselves, when they're in your presence, oh my gosh, I can't think of anything more valuable than that. And we're not taught that. We hopefully learn it on our own as we grow up, but most people don't. They don't
Yeah.
understand those principles. But anyway, that's where I created the likability guy. And again, that was a hobby as well. I didn't really, I gave some speeches on it, of course, right? But I just did that because I was fascinated with the subject and there was a great interest. People really got a kick out of it. And I can see why. So anyway, thanks for asking about that.
Well, you are very likable. I remember when we first met, I liked you instantly. You have a great, I was going to say aura, but that sounds too reverential.
Oh, okay, well, I'm going to
But
look
you'd
up
be
your.
happy with me using aura, probably. You have a very, what would have been Franklin called it, a countenance. You're
Okay,
just pleasant and pleasing, and you just have a real people skill thing about you. This is a
ditto.
nice bridge to artificial intelligence, by the way,
I think so.
because I know that you've done a deep dive of this, and along the way, I do want to talk about why people fear AI and why they think it's problematic. But if you don't mind, I know you have five attributes or five situations where AI can't really help us. And you
Right,
mentioned one of them already, which is this idea of empathy. It's like a second cousin to likability. Empathy
right.
is this ability to feel what another person is feeling. It's called sentience, isn't it? When you say something has feelings, and that's the
Okay,
biggest
yeah,
problem people will have
yeah,
with AI. AI has no feelings. It's a database, for gosh sakes.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But I will tell you, it's getting better and better at these things, right?
Yeah,
So, Michael, if you don't mind, let's start with AI. Our experience, yours and mine with it, so
yeah,
people have an idea of exactly what it is we're talking about and what we're competing against, right?
sure.
So, when you look at AI, I think about, we're the same age, right? We both graduated from high school in 2016, is that right? 2017, right
Oh
around that.
no, I got out in 1976.
Oh, well, I guess I was one that got out in 2016, but
You must be a lot younger than me then.
I must be. I must be. But think about it. We both graduated,
AI is better at math than
right?
you are.
So what happened is when we got out of school and went on to college and graduated, the first few years we didn't have access to personal computers. They weren't there. We had filing cabinets, business cards, whatever we had. We did everything with pencil and paper. And then after 2 or 3 years, maybe in the early 80s, before 85, I remember my first computer was a Tandy 1000, and then I quickly went to Mac when it came out. And how about you? Do you remember your first computer?
It was an Acer.
Wow,
I
pretty
don't know why I
special.
remember that. Huh?
Yeah, pretty special.
It was
But
special at the time. It was slower than hell. It didn't have a mouse. I was jealous of anybody that had a mouse. But this was the beginning of it, and we just
right.
saw so many. We didn't even call it AI then. Although, and I'm not sure technically we were using AI at that point. What's your
Well, it
what's
was.
your story?
I don't. It's not AI, but it's new technology that came along
Yes,
and
yes,
was capable of making our lives easier. Right.
that's right.
So fortunately, we were young enough that we caught right onto it. We caught the
Yeah,
wave.
yeah.
So we were the experts. And then there were people like my mom, who at the time was 50. Now she's well into her career, and yet she decided to learn how to use computers and take advantage of it. Now, she was never going to know as much as people our age did because she didn't start with it where we did, right? So
Right.
she had to get rid of old habits before she took on the new. And then there were people like my dad, who was 5 years older, that just, I'm not dealing with this. I don't need to. I'm going to retire soon. And we're still finding that now. Now, you and I are at the age where we're not going to dive into AI like a 20-year-old is. It's going to be their life, right? So regardless of what our age is, AI is the new desktop computer. It's the new mobile phone. So
Yeah,
this technology is going to massively change how we do things, right?
yeah,
So AI can do so many things for us. For example, I use it to write copy. I use it. There's a humor AI site. It's called, what's it called? It's called punchlines.ai. So you can use AI to write humor. And it was interesting. You write the setup and Punch AI will write the punchline. So I tried it this morning and I said, okay, here's the setup. I love everything about my 30-year-old yellow Datsun. And then AI came back with a punch that said everything except the fact it's 30 years old, it's yellow, and it's a Datsun. I'm like, okay,
oh,
that's pretty good. Let's see
yeah,
where you're
not
going.
bad.
But the fact that AI can do humor, it can write for you, it can assimilate billions and billions of pieces of information and give you a synopsis so you have a complete understanding. I look at the legal practice. Think about it. You're a lawyer and you have to know all of this different law, all of these different case histories and studies, and AI can do it just like that. I mean, just like that. I think it's going to change that industry unlike a lot of others. And it's not that lawyers aren't going to be, you know, uh, legitimate anymore. It's they're going to be able to handle such a bigger caseload because they're going to have access to things they didn't have access to before.
Because
And the
AI
other,
is based, the legal system is based on precedent, something that's already happened. If it's been documented, it's a case
absolutely,
study, it must be in the computer.
yep.
We sift through it that much more quickly and get what we need. Yeah, I see that.
And when we talk about how we're different from AI, how the things we can do where we're not competing with AI, but we're adding that extra value. My sister's a lawyer, and she's I hear her say this all the time. It's not about right and wrong; it's about the law. And that hurts me when I hear that. It's not about right or wrong; it's about the law. That's what AI is. It's about the law. It's about what AI has access to. It's not about common sense and empathy and all these other things, which is what AI cannot do.
Hmm.
But at this point, there's AI drawing art. Have you ever used Dali or Midjourney? Have you ever done that to take text to art? Have you ever tried it?
No.
It is fascinating, and I'm going to guess most of our listeners have. You put in a text prompt that says, draw me a picture of a professional golfer hitting a hole in one where there's a crescent moon behind him and he's doing it at night while smoking a cigarette. And oh my gosh, it just creates this thing and it's magic. And it's not that AI is going to be eliminating blue collar jobs. It will, but it's going to be changing how white collar people do their work.
Hmm.
It's just completely crazy. So one of the other things that I like to do, I would say I'm a novice today. I am certainly not an expert, but I love just researching it. And I get this newsletter. It's called TheRundown.AI. And every morning I get what's going on with AI. There's ChatGPT, Claude, Perplexity, Bard, Gemini. There's all these really interesting AI tools. And there's I won't say millions, but there's thousands of AI tools that can do all kinds of things for you. And I encourage you, all of us at any age, research what's going on in AI. I have never seen more changes, more information come out quicker than I have with this AI. Now you can take text and create a video. Hollywood is completely changing. It's going to be to the point where you don't need actors and actresses anymore. They're all going to be artificially created. And they're going to be these amazing personalities without the people. So, when you think about how it's going to change the world, it is. And I'm not saying that to scare you if you're a lawyer or if you make movies or if you're a professional speaker. I'm telling you that because these tools will help you do your job better, way better. And if you ignore it, like my dad ignored the PC, it's going to bypass you and you won't be able to compete anymore. Now,
Well
that being,
put.
go ahead.
Well put.
Oh, well, thank you. Now, I get the feeling that do you have any experience with AI that you're aware of? Now, my guess is you have a lot of experience with AI that you're not aware of. But as far as you know, do you have experience with AI, Michael, that you are in fact aware of, that you've used it
Oh, sure.
somewhere.
You know, I used it for copy and things like that. And I know a lot of people that have used it. I've edited a lot of AI copy. So certainly from a copywriting point of view, yes.
And by the way, you're a writer yourself and you're good at it. So I'm horrible at it. So for me, it's this amazing tool. But for you as a professional writer, do you find it as valuable?
Not yet, although I understand it's going to be it's going to come along. I was talking with somebody the other day about, speaking of Hollywood and writing. I was saying, I was talking to this AI guy, a tech guy out in West Coast, on the West Coast, and I was saying, you know, when I do my YouTube, he says you should look at that for your YouTube videos. And I said, I don't know, man. I have a particular personality. I've got these quirks. You know, I pause a little bit when I'm talking, and he says, well, you know, eventually AI will figure that out and be able to imitate you perfectly. I said, even my humor? He said, yes.
Which
I,
is
I,
creepy, isn't it?
oh yeah, I don't completely understand it, but he was dead serious when he said that.
Yeah. And what
So
I mean by creepy is that there's more than just you walking around with your sense of humor. That's creepy.
yeah, yeah,
So, and you know, and here's where it can get kind of creepy dangerous. I want you to imagine AI has got you down. Okay. Now there's
yeah.
this latency thing, right? Where you say something to AI and it takes a minute and then it responds. But imagine if, um, and my mom had this experience years ago before AI was out there, where this voice called and said, I've kidnapped your daughter. Send me $1,000 or you never see your daughter again, and hung up the phone. Now,
Your mom had that happen to her?
she had that happen when my sister was in college. This is 30 years ago. And my mom absolutely freaked out. And this was on a Friday night when a college person would generally be out, no cell phones.
Right.
My mom was terrified. She called the police, and the police told her that this is a scam that's happening in prisons across the country. Not that they get anything from it, they're doing it just because they're sick human beings. And so they put a stop to it. But imagine now if something like that happened, and my mom said, I want to talk to my daughter. And my sister would have responded in her voice with her cadence with no latency. My
Wow.
mom could ask her any question, and my sister would answer with whatever emotion AI thought was appropriate to do what it needed to do. And these kinds of scams are coming when AI is used in an inappropriate way. So these are the things people are afraid of, by the way.
The deep fake videos, that's a form of AI, right?
Absolutely. And they're only going to get better or worse, however you want to look at it.
Deep fake, everybody, you've probably heard the term is, for example, somebody creates a video of the President of the United States saying that another country is attacking us.
Right.
And they have the ability to do that because they have access to AI. You end up seeing it because they have social media accounts. It becomes
Right.
viral before anybody can squelch it or tell you it is a fake video. We got a bunch of people panicking and going to buy guns and water and
And then,
ammunition.
and imagine AI taking over the algorithms. So Facebook gets in there and says, oh, we got to stop showing this. And AI said, we're in control. We're going to show it to everybody all the time. There's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah,
So
wow. No
it can
wonder
be,
people are afraid, Bob.
well, I think we should leave your audience with this fear of dread and everything else. And great to have the conversation, Michael. Thanks.
Okay, now you got a bunch of stuff you got to fix. Fix it.
Well, let's look at the good side of this. You know, when we look at embracing your humanity in an AI world, what does the humanity part of it mean? Where AI is going to have a very difficult time competing with us. You know, we've looked at how it's going to be hard for us to compete with AI, text to voice, text to video, writing graphics. Now, what is it AI is going to have a very difficult time competing with us on? And there's more, but I want to give you the five big ones I think that are important. And I
Okay.
know you and I talked about these earlier, and you're like, boy, these are it. And the first one, which you brought up, is empathy, the ability to fully empathize and understand the feelings, the emotions of another human being. Now, AI does a pretty good job of emulating that now, but it's not perfect at it. You know, I think the day is going to come where, you know, you've got a customer walking into a bank, and on one side, you have Mr. Smith, it's good seeing you again. How are you? Can I get you anything? Grab a seat. And on the other side, you're going to have a human being. Right? AI is going to be awesome at this, but it's not genuine. It's not real. It doesn't have a soul. And I think that's the thing with AI. I want to talk with someone that has a soul. I
Yeah,
want to talk to someone that will cry with me, that understands me, that will pray for me, right? That is more than just giving me the words and feelings, or the words that it thinks I need to hear. Now, Michael, there are all kinds, and this is a new thing that's going out there, where you can talk to AI as a psychologist. You can say, "Hey, ChatGPT, I want you to pretend you're a professional psychologist, and I want to have a conversation with you and help me through this." And AI will take the role of a professional psychologist, psychiatric, whatever, and it will engage with you in that manner. And it's pretty darn amazing, but it's not a real human being. And after so many words, it says, "Stop, we have to start a new conversation." Humans don't do that. We can go on forever. Now, let me ask you, as a speaker, that empathy is hugely important.
sure.
Um, can you give me an example when you're speaking? And I want you to imagine there's you and an AI robot. You're going to be able to empathize with that audience. And I watch you do this, and I see you do it. You're so wonderful with your improv that you're engaged. I
Yeah.
don't think a will ever come when AI can do that. What are your
Well,
thoughts
I
on that?
appreciate the kind words. I use a thing I call reflexive humor, which is
Yeah.
that's that impromptu thing. It's ad lib. Uh, Now, I do think we can probably get that quick comeback, intellectual comeback.
Right.
But you asked me initially, this is where I thought you were going as a speaker. What can't AI do for speakers?
Right.
Well, I often know there's a question behind the question. AI would just answer the question because that's what it's taught to do.
Right.
But I know they really want to know something else. So, as
Right.
a human being with empathy, I would say, did that answer your question, or is there something else you'd really like to know? Because
Absolutely.
only a feeling person would have that response.
Right, right, right. Well, let me give you a couple of examples. These are Postal Service examples. When we were traveling around, we would always ask our audience, and I thought this was a wonderful thing to do as a speaker. I would ask the audience, "What's the scariest thing that's ever happened to you? And what's the most embarrassing thing that's ever happened to you?" And the stories that people would come up with were crazy. So I remember I was down in Key West, Florida, um, and this lady told me a story. She said it was Thanksgiving. So and remember, this is 30 plus years ago. So she said all the people that were vacationing in Key West had bought presents and they wanted to send them back so that people would have them for Christmas. And she said, here it is, a few days before Thanksgiving. And there must have been dozens and dozens of people, waiting in this long line that just weaved back and forth. And I'm just a one person little post office here in Key West. And she said, I could see the frustration on their faces. So I looked up and I said, "Hey, hey, how many of y'all would like to be standing in a shorter line?" She said, they all raised their hand. And then she said, then move closer together, which AI isn't going to come up with that. And she empathized with this audience and finally gave them the ability to empathize with them. Oh, in Detroit, you live right up there in Michigan. I heard one of the window clerks told me it was 5 o'clock. And at the post office at 5, they locked the door. I mean, they can't have people coming in.
Yeah.
So like 5 o'clock, the clerk went up to lock the door. He closed the door, and a guy put his foot in the door, and he pushed himself in, and he passed whoever else was in the line, and he had an envelope, and he looked to the clerk and he said, "Look, I want this in Las Vegas, and I want it there tonight." And the clerk looked around and he said, "Yes, sir, that'll be $700, and I'm leaving right now." Now, you're not going to get that from AI.
No.
And you're right. It's that improv, that genuine understanding what's going on and looking at it in a different way, right? So, number two on our list is curiosity. It's interesting as kids. I remember when my kids were little, "Dad, how does that work? What's this? Why did you say that?" And then as time goes on, Michael, we stop asking those questions. I read somewhere that an average 4-year-old asks something like 300 questions a day.
Mm.
And we're like, "Stop asking, blah, blah, blah." But curiosity, there's things I'm curious about. And I want to hear what you're curious about. I want to know how heat pumps work. How does it work? How does it know? How does it make cold air one time and hot air the next? How does it do that? I want to know, why does my grandson laugh when I tickle his feet, but he doesn't laugh when he tickles himself? How does that work? There's tons of things I want to know. What about you? What's something you're curious about?
Oh my gosh. Curiosity is my favorite character trait in a person.
Isn't it wonderful?
Don't get me started with YouTube deep dives into YouTube, because they suggest something else that's related to something you just saw, and I'm like, well, I have a music background, you may remember, and a
Right,
guy
sure.
named Dave Loggins just passed away. He only had one hit song, it was "Please Come to Boston."
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah,
Loggins, is he any
right,
relation to Kenny Loggins? I was curious.
yeah.
Did he
And
have, did he have any other songs? It turns out he had lots of songs. He wrote a song called Pieces of April for Three Dog Night, one of my favorite
sure,
tunes.
I
I
didn't
would have
know that.
never
That's one of my
learned any
favorite.
of that if I wasn't curious.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Isn't it amazing where curiosity takes us, by the way?
Sure.
It's my favorite word as well. Whenever someone says to me, I'm curious about that, I don't care what I'm doing, I stop and look. I pay attention
Yeah.
because I'm thinking to myself, am I curious? AI isn't curious about stuff. AI researches it and comes up with an answer. Now, one of my favorite AI tools is something called Perplexity, Perplexity.AI. And I engage with Perplexity all the time. I'm like, tell me about this, and it will respond. It'll give me all the sources, but then it gives me 5 or 6 other things where I can dig deeper. So it's a form of curiosity, but it is by far my favorite of all the ChatGPT lookalikes out there. But curiosity is something that AI just can't do. And I think if I were an employer and I found someone that was curious, that was Einstein's greatest skill, his curiosity, right? How does this work? Why does that matter? Et cetera, et cetera. So I think if we can learn about and demonstrate and not be afraid to ask questions, you know, it's interesting. When I had my little public speaking thing going on, there were a couple of our speakers that were constantly asking questions. And at first, I'm like, how do you not know that? I mean, we covered that. How do you not know that? But I would watch the other speakers all making notes. They didn't know it either. But these 2 or 3 were the ones that were interested enough to ask, and they weren't afraid of looking stupid. And
Yeah.
as time went on, not only did I admire that, but I started looking stupid because I started asking a lot of questions. And I truly believe as time goes on, as businesses are hiring people, they're going to be much more interested in the people that ask questions. You've heard there's no stupid questions, and I've heard some stupid questions, but for the most part, there are not. They're just things we're curious. So that's number 2 on my list. And I would encourage you to develop your empathy and curiosity. And you can practice curiosity by just asking more questions. Number 3 on our list is, and this is an important one, ethical decision making. And I go back to, again, my sister with the law. The law is not about right and wrong, just or unjust. It's about the law. And when I think of having AI act as a judge, and AI follows the law, right? So I'm found guilty of something, and the minimum sentence is this. Now, what AI does not take into account is my level of remorse, the fact that there were massive extenuating circumstances, the fact that the person that I perpetrated this crime on is incredibly forgiving, that by the time the sentencing comes around, I am not that same person that committed this crime. Nothing is the same. But AI, following the law, is going to say, okay, because of that, here is your punishment. The punishment does not fit the crime any longer. And that's why, we want to have these judges, these humans that can look at all of these human factors and make an ethical decision based on what's right at the time. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So earlier you said that lawyers will have a much easier job because of AI, but maybe judges won't. I can tell
Maybe,
you, I was just served on a jury, and I don't know
yeah.
how AI could ever serve on a jury.
That's a great point. And tell me your jury example where the humanity aspect of it played a big part. Can you talk about this now, or
Yeah, yeah. Well, one of the basic premises, the plural of premises is premi.
thank
One
you.
of the premi was that in order to be a good juror, you had to be totally objective. You had to leave all of your opinions in the car, when you came into the courthouse. And he gave the example was, have you ever been driving down the road and a police car had pulled a car over and you find yourself thinking to yourself, I wonder what that guy did wrong. And we all raised our hands because everybody's done it.
Right, absolutely.
Well, you're not objective. You're assuming that the guy did something wrong. So that was a nice little lesson to us that we really had to aim for some true north on the compass that was a lot more accurate than what we thought it was. And
That is,
that comes from that comes from a bunch of stuff. It comes from empathy. It comes from we all have our own
oh,
databases. It,
sure,
it comes from not
absolutely.
accessing your database.
Well, and you
This
know
like
what's interesting? The databases we have, they come from the premise of having a soul.
yeah.
We're not just we're not just a computer. We're a human. We have feelings, which AI
Not just a
doesn't.
soul, but because our database is up here as well, intellectual knowledge, experiences
Right,
that we've had. But the
exactly.
differential, I'm with you on this, is that we have a soul that also has an experience
Yep,
of, if you're religious and you're listening to this, we're using soul the way some people use God, your version of soul, whatever that means to you, everybody.
right.
So I'm with you that when you're talking about ethical decision making, that it's not a clear black and white thing. It's not a zero and a one that
Right.
comes from a computer database like AI.
Right. And along those lines, in more of a religious format, when I think of ethical decision making, I think of these two terms. Um, and they are grace on one end, and on the other end, let me think of what I'm looking at here. Uh, I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. It's
Well,
interesting.
I like grace as a concept. I know it's used in religious contexts all the time, but I don't think it has to be.
No, I agree with you. And as a matter of fact, if you give me just a second, there is here we go.
Are you going to consult AI?
Yes, I am. So after consulting AI, here's what I came up with. The other side is mercy, grace and mercy.
Yes. Yeah.
So, and I heard a really great definition, if I can remember this. Mercy is not bestowing a punishment on someone that deserves it. And grace is bestowing a blessing or something wonderful on someone that does not deserve
Oh,
it. And
interesting.
if you follow just AI, there is no grace and mercy. It's a human characteristic.
Right.
I don't have to punish you for something that you should be punishable. I have the ability to not do that, and I can provide grace or a favor on someone that doesn't deserve it either. That's what makes me human. So I think that's a really important skill that we need to think about and develop. The fourth one is common sense. I don't think AI has a lick of common sense. I just don't. And it's like AI knows that a tomato is a fruit, but it doesn't know enough to know you're not going to put a tomato in a fruit salad, right? It's not common sense says don't do that. It's a vegetable. Don't put it in a fruit salad or whatever. So there's so much with common sense. Now, it's true, there are human beings that have a ton of common sense, and there's other human beings that don't have any common sense at all. The ones I'm most concerned about are the ones that have a ton of common sense, and they have it because they've never used any of it. It's like, oh my gosh, this is so easy to figure out, right?
Yeah, conversely,
So,
I know a lot of people with artificial intelligence.
exactly. So I think just showing off that you have common sense, that is that's a skill that AI just doesn't have, and I don't think it's ever going to get. I don't know. Something that may look like common sense, but not. And then finally, Michael, the last of these five that I've got here, which include empathy, curiosity, ethical decision making, common sense, and the last one is the one we're the most familiar with. It's just basic leadership skills. When you think about, I'm going to go into the workforce, what skill can I develop that's going to make me indispensable when AI is coming around? Um, well, if you're an engineer, an architect, a lawyer, AI is going to be competing with a big part of what you do, but leadership, basic leadership skills are things that AI is going to struggle with forever because basic leadership includes all the things we just talked about. It also includes emotional intelligence, basic people skills, motivation, problem solving, working with teams, all of those things. So, one of the things I would encourage all of our listeners, particularly if you're in the younger aspects, you're new to the workforce, and you're saying to yourself, I really want to become indispensable in this new world. I want to be the person businesses look to and hire. I would encourage you to do everything in your power to enhance and develop your leadership skills and take that role sooner rather than later when that opportunity presents itself. But anyway, that's my take on where AI is, where it's going, and what separates us from AI in the future.
Thank you very much. What AI is it? It's not really called an app, is it? What is it called?
No, I don't know what so there's tons of apps that use different AI, but so go ahead with your question
Well,
if
you
you
had
don't.
listed a few dot AIs,
Right.
punchlines, rundown, perplexity, Dali, I
And of
think
course,
Dali AI.
there's Chat GPT, right, which is the most well known.
Right.
But some of the ones, like for example, Chat GPT, its counterpart would be things like Claude, Perplexity, which is my favorite, Bard, which is fabulous, and you can get that when you use Bing. Bard is in essence GPT chat or Chat GPT 4.0, so you can get access to the paid version for free when you go to Bing and you use their Bard. There's Gemini, which I believe is Google's equivalent of ChatGPT. And then when it comes to the uh, text to pictures, text to graphic, Midjourney is the one that's most well known, and I think it may be a spinoff of Dali, D-A-L-I, which is another great one. It's always improving. But one of the places I go to is if you go to the Rundown AI, it will show you all of the different AI apps that are out there. Text to video. Another great one is a still shot to text. So if there's a picture or a particular style you really like, you can go into AI and say, give me the words that describe the style of this picture, so that then you can use those words and go back into a different AI program and create a picture that has that same style. But it's happening so fast, Michael. At one time there was AI to video that you could get 1 second video, then it's 5 seconds of video, then it's 10 seconds of video, then it's 10 seconds of high quality video. So the rate at which AI is changing and it will help you do your job is crazy. So that uh, those are the ones that I enjoy the most. And there's thousands of these sites out there. But
What,
I get a
talk a bit
newsletter
about, yeah,
go ahead.
thank you. Talk about free versus paid, Bob. Uh, you've already distinguished a couple of them that are paid, the more advanced version, you're going to get what you pay for kind of a thing.
Right.
Do you think AI will be free? Some form of AI will be free now and forever?
Yes, I do. Right now, what you can get for free is unbelievable. In a lot of the cases, the paid version is just more access to it. But for
Right.
example, when I write copy, like I use Perplexity, and I don't pay for it, but I could use Perplexity all day long, asking questions, engaging in conversation. You can use Midjourney and create dozens and dozens of pictures every day for free, and it's the same quality you would get as the paid version. So, the paid version is literally just one step ahead. But, and Michael, there's people that are way deep. I'm just an AI novice. I just play with it, right? It's a
Yeah.
hobby for me. There's people that know a whole lot more about this than you and I do.
No,
But
but I
quite frankly,
enjoyed your take on it because like this other gentleman I interviewed, he's very knowledgeable, but he's very technical. He didn't have the human aspects uh, in his pocket like you do, and he also didn't have. He couldn't express as clearly the yin and the yang. I love how you're thinking of it. That looking forward, we're going to get certain things from AI that AI does extremely well, but we need to supplement using our own talent and skill and cultivation,
correct.
the things that AI can't do well, to your mind, empathy, curiosity, ethical decision making, common sense, and leadership skills. I just
Right.
love the package that you put together. And so much of that dovetails to your past work and expertise, which is likability and interfacing with the human race,
Right.
which can be used, desperately used by a lot of people. I think, and we'll close with this, Bob, ever since COVID, and ever since devices have kind of taken over our lives, that we're putting less attention to these five things that you mentioned as core human skills. You notice that
Absolutely.
on the island?
I noticed that with everything,
Yeah.
literally everything.
I
And
mean, I talk to people in line and you think they're going to call security. We didn't used to have that kind of, and I talk to people in line. I get the guy in front of me, I get the guy behind me,
yeah,
and
yeah,
they do
yeah.
not want to be chatted up.
Well, Michael, you've got to consider the source too, man, so
I meet people against their will,
yeah,
Bob.
yeah. Isn't that crazy? I'm really surprised you've not had security called on you before because
Well,
I see you engage with people, man. So
but you know what happens is my empathy kicks in. I realize they're not really comfortable with this, some of them,
yeah,
and I
yeah,
back off. Same thing on airplane seats. I don't know about you, but if somebody's going to sit next to me for 3 hours, I'm going to at least say hello.
absolutely. And give them the opportunity to show themselves, right?
But it turns out
So
some people would rather not.
yeah, 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 I know. Which is okay, right?
It is okay, but
So
I have to quickly decide, this my kind of guy or not. And if it's
exactly.
not, I do not force myself on them. And I don't think AI can do that, to your point.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, I hope I'm going to see you again in person. This convention, Rotary Convention, is coming to town. I think it's like 3 years out. When I say coming to
Okay.
town, I mean coming to Hawaii.
Yeah,
And I'll give you plenty of notice, and hopefully we get to hang out.
that would be great. It would be fun seeing you again.
If you like Bob's style, and who doesn't, because he's so likable, you want to find him at bobsommers.com, everybody. BOBSOMMERS.com. I'll put it down in the description of the video and also the podcast. Bob Summers, you're a treat. You're a gift to mankind, humankind. Thank you for all you do.
Thanks, Michael.
We'll see you soon.
See you later.